Next up, the Western song. All right, so now we'll move on to roll call. I think Melissa put the session ID in the chat, but if not, it should be at the top of the agenda. Shanika, were you able to access Cheryl's voting?
No, but I have her proxy for him.
Okay, Melissa, would we do the form for that one too? Does that work?
Yeah, so I just shared a form with you, Shanika, with your Western or your USC email address, and you can just put in.
Okay. All of her thanks. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Melissa, can you let me know when we're good to go?
Yeah, I'm still waiting on one person, but I'm going to go ahead and close. It's been 2 minutes, so I'll close that.
Okay. All right. Next up, we have comments from the chair. The only reminder I have tonight would just be to, during debate, remember your decorum and address your comments directly to the chair, just to keep good habits. And next up, we have, oh, there we go, approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments for tonight?
Yeah, Megan, President Reeser.
Yeah.
Just wanted to add, we're just wanting to add one whereas statement to motion 1, and I can recite it once we're ready.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I can go for it. Yeah, so we're adding a second whereas below the first one, and it will read, whereas the recently announced extension of the winter break impacts the elections timeline.
Okay, and so that's just, sorry, you said motion 1, right?
Yeah, in motion 1, it's the second whereas we're wanting to add there.
Okay, sounds good. Oh, it looks like Melissa's putting it in the doc there. That's perfect.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, could I get a seconder for the proposed amendment?
Counselor Ali.
All right, thank you. Are there any objections to making this amendment? Would anybody like to abstain from voting on the proposed amendment? Okay, then we can make that there. Is there any other amendments? Okay, if nobody has anything else, I'll be looking for a mover in favor of approving the agenda for tonight.
Counselor Mendez.
Thank you. And can I get a seconder?
Counselor Ali.
Thank you. Are there any objections to approving the agenda? Would anybody like to abstain from voting on the agenda? Oh, I guess, Melissa, do you want to do it in Turning Point?
I have it up in Turning Point.
Okay, perfect. Then we can just do it in Turning Point. So we have that on the record then. Okay, I think that's 2 minutes.
Okay, close the polls. I guess the motion passes unanimously. We've approved the agenda as amended.
Perfect. And do we have a Turning Point thing for approving the minutes?
We do.
Okay. Are there any amendments or issues with the minutes? Okay, then we can vote on those two on Turning Point.
We do need a mover in favor for that, Megan.
Oh,
mover
right,
in
sorry. Can I get a mover in favor of approving the minutes?
Counselor
Counselor
Mo-
Sorry,
Councillor Bismarck moved to approve the minutes.
thank you. And a seconder?
I can second you, Counselor Mahakal.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we can vote. Sorry, got ahead of myself. Okay, I think we're good to close it there.
It also passes unanimously.
It's good to hear. Okay, so first up in our presentation section for tonight is our VP Governance and Finance, St. Pierre. Whenever you're ready.
Awesome. I probably won't present anything formal document-wise, but I might share my screen at the end. If Melissa or Megan, you want to send over the post. I don't want to just preach out policy here, so I won't go too. I'll explain it more, hopefully, for everybody to understand. So council composition policy, it exists within the policy manual. So the reason why it's coming forward is at November council of every year, council is to vote on the composition for next year. The composition reads that every council gets 1 seat, and then after 1,000 votes, or sorry, 1,000 students from the previous year, you get another seat added for your composition. So I'll just share my screen and show you what the composition looks like from the 2019-2020 enrollment versus for the 2020-2022 council composition. So this isn't affecting this year at all, but it's taking last year's enrollment and moving forward to next year. So you'll see the vote at the end of I think it's the very end of the agenda, but I'll share my screen and kind of show the reasoning for it before. Let me just pull it up. So I have a billion documents open. Cool. Awesome. So as you'll see here, I listed out the policy in the brief quickly, just from what it reads. So the one thing I was going to flag to you, and I've talked to a number of councilors about this, is council in the past has not interpreted this policy or has not reviewed this policy in the right way. So I was just following what the policy is reading in interpreting for next year's council composition. So you'll see the enrollment numbers are below. This is not reflective of what's happened in the past. Last year you saw social science and science had 8 and 7 counselors respectively, and then arts had 2. And so this year, what we're going to be planning on doing for next year is removing one of the counselor seats from arts, which so it's a voting seat. And we'll also remove one from science and social science, but medicine will be getting a new one. And that's following what the policy says in terms of adding 1 vote per 1,000 students and the base 1. So that's the reasoning behind kind of the constituent here. So I'll show the breakdown of what it looks like at the bottom here. This is based off the policy manual. So these are the only changes you'll see. I'll just highlight them quickly. Is the arts went down to 1, and then social science was 7, science is 6. And I flagged that to most of the constituents, but I just wanted to have an open conversation. I think ACOC had asked me to present it quickly. So I guess we probably shouldn't do questions because I know there's a question period at the end as well for the motion itself. But if there's any questions or comments or concerns right now, just let me know.
Yeah, you still have time for questions if you want. You have 15 minutes allotted.
Great, yeah. I saw Zamir had his hand up, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a quick question if that's okay. I'm going to take that as a yes.
Sorry.
Sorry, I wasn't sure who you were talking to.
Oh, that is totally okay. Yeah, Zamir, social science president. I'm kind of wondering why, what the rationale is for ensuring each constituency has a minimum of 1 seat. I'm kind of worried, and I'm saying this as social science president, is that, because my faculty is so large, we get a disproportionately large representation at council. And, as a representative of social science, I can't complain too much about that. But I'm concerned that if arts and education and dentistry and FIMS and so forth only have 1 seat, to what extent are they really going to be able to influence policies that larger faculties like social science and science, might disagree with them on?
Yeah, for sure. I can just address the question. So I think the premise behind the policy, I'm inheriting this policy from a number of years ago, so I'll try my best to interpret why it was written in the first place. It's just by the numbers. I think they wanted to give each faculty 1 representative seat to start, which is pretty common among the population versus representation, and then per 1,000 go up from there. But I believe this policy has been carried over a number of years. So I think there is room for consideration on that end, and I think council, it's something that could be tasked to the future councils. I don't think that's out of the question at all. I do agree with you, Councilor Faccarini, that's kind of a conversation that should be had. So.
Counselor Ali.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Counselor Ali, I just saw your hand up function. That's actually
Yeah, just
really
for reference,
useful.
do you want us to type our names in the chat, or is it shouting out okay? Like,
Yeah, either works.
Okay.
Whatever you're more comfortable with.
Okay. So Counselor Ali, Arts and Humanities. So I would like you to speak to the rationale behind interpreting the policy this way when precedent has, said otherwise. You know, in a year where students, especially from smaller faculties such as FIMS, arts and music, as well as some of our professional schools, already feel underrepresented. And in a year where, you know, the academic and social context has shifted greatly, I'm confused as to why the policy has been decided to be interpreted as such. It could be interpreted to add seats instead of retracting seats. And I'm concerned, I'd like to echo all of the things that President Faccarini said, and thank you, Faccarini, for bringing those up. Where I'm sure we'll be having a much more extensive conversation about this come the motion itself. But I'd like some rationale on why in a year where there is already so much concern from students about representation or lack thereof, the decision to interpret the policy this way was made.
Yeah, for sure. So I can premise that I went around for a couple of days trying to figure out the right way to go about this, because I would agree that there was a mistake made in the past and how it was interpreted. I would say that this is the correct interpretation of the policy. I wouldn't say it was precedent per se. So the reason why we did it was because of the way that the current smaller faculties are set up. So if let's say I rounded, so like the mistake on the policy manual is, so let's say social sci they've never had over 7,000 students. So they got an additional seat on council, even though they didn't have over 7,000 students. And that was kind of the precedent that was set. And then some of the smaller faculties weren't added a seat at all. So the reason why we took away those seats to interpret it in the same construct way, because if we added a seat to, let's say, the laws, the musics, you're going to increase the representation of all the faculties and not necessarily the actual representation itself in the voting. Like the demographic, it's got to be across all faculties. And that's why it was interpreted like this. But again, that's how I interpret the policy. So as the steward of the policy manual in some sense to council, that was my professional take on it.
Are there any further questions? Okay, if nobody has any other questions, thank you for the presentation. And we will move on to our first for action item, which is the legislative calendar updates. And sorry, I'll just get the presentation screen shared here. Oops. All right. Could I get a mover in favor of this motion?
Counselor Ali.
Thank you. And could I get a seconder?
Councilor Baldwin.
Thanks. Counselor Lee, would you like to speak to the motion?
I can defer my speaking time to whichever VP would be most appropriate to speak on this.
Okay.
I can just touch on it quickly, Megan. So from the lens, if you're okay, sorry, I don't want to step in for you. So from the lens of the new bylaw changes, so you'll see in the actual legislative calendar, the VP elections have now been passed along past reading week, just because within consultations, and the reason why the bylaw was changed that way is because campaigning during reading week didn't make sense for the VP elections. So that was the initial change. The probably more substantive change that you saw with the amendment to the motion was that the fall reading week, fall break has been extended. So you'll see the change in the calendar now is that presidential nominations open on January 11th or 12th, and then close the week after, which has extended everything 1 week. So that's the context I'll give on that end. It hasn't really changed much just because of the way that we structure the calendar anyways this year, which is great. So it's been somewhat beneficial in a lot of ways.
All right, thank you. Councillor Baldwin, did you want to speak to the motion?
I think everything that was said.
All right, perfect. Are there any questions on the motion? All right. If nobody has any questions, then we can move on to debate on the motion. If anybody has any debate they'd like to contribute. Okay, seeing no points of debate, then we can call to question. Please go to Turning Point and vote on the motion. Okay, I think we should be pretty close to 2 minutes.
Okay, I've closed the poll and the motion carries 97% in favor, 3% opposed.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on to our second motion for tonight. President Reeser, did you want to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'll just do it briefly. So as everyone I think maybe saw with the USC Instagram account or anything like that posting about this is simply an election to it's like run by the administration side, but the President's Advisory Committee on Environmental Sustainability, PACES is the term that will probably be used often for it. And yeah, basically we're just looking for an additional undergraduate student representative to play a role at this table. I'm really excited to get a start. It was something that had been on a hiatus for a couple of years, but it's going to be a great step towards looking for some ambitious goals for Western from a sustainability lens. So I think to follow this is going to be an election with some incredible candidates, and I look forward to it.
All right, thank you. And can I get a seconder for the motion?
You can second it, Councilor Malcolm.
Thank you. Okay, so we will do the 1 minute speeches then, or I guess we could do questions first in case anybody has any questions they want to clarify beforehand. Okay, if there's no questions, we will move on to our candidates. I'll stop screen sharing so you can give them your full attention. Okay. Okay, so we can just go in alphabetical order then by last name. So our first up for the 1 minute speech is Kenisha Aurora. So whenever you're ready.
Hello, everyone. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to run for this position because I firmly believe that institutions play a great role in championing leaders that are mindful of the impact of their actions. During my time as a student trustee, I worked with the Minister of Education to incorporate climate literacy into elementary classes, and I therefore have experience in academic programming pertaining to sustainability. And after attending the USC, I was able to learn a lot about what principles students across the province feel are important to be addressed, from energy sourcing through divestments to eco-friendly transportation and resource procurement. I can offer insight into progressive steps the university can take. Also, as a member of our University Strategic Planning Senate Committee, I work with our administrative teams on developing our university strategic plan, and so I can directly ensure that we are creating a sustainable Western, and that's a priority for us.
right, thank you very much. Next up, we have Jordan Decker, whenever you're ready.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Jordan Decker and I'm a second-year environment and kinesiology student. For years I lived in downtown Toronto and have seen firsthand urban landscapes that were completely saturated with human development. But I've also had the privilege to live in natural environments untouched by humans, both when I've been tree planting and canoe tripping in Northern Ontario and Labrador. Having lived in both of these natural and urban environments, I understand the importance and of why and how human activity needs to strive to become more sustainable. I'm the ideal person to represent students on this committee due to the genuine passion I have for the environment, as well as my effective ability and desire to influence other individuals to become involved. As a resident staff, active in environmental clubs, and the general Western community, I'm connected to countless students and student leaders who I look forward to gaining input from and having the chance to positively influence our community. Our environment deserves effective, dedicated, and passionate advocacy, and I promise, if chosen, that I can bring to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Shanella George. Whenever you're ready.
I'm not seeing anyone by that name on the call.
Okay. Then next up, we have Anna here.
Thank you and hello everyone. So to highlight some of my relevant experiences to the goals of the advisory committee, I'll start off with the first goal, which is to ramp up the efficiency of university buildings. I'm currently receiving my LEED Green Associate designation, which provides me with up-to-date understanding of the most current green building principles and practices, which will provide me with unique knowledge to bring to the committee to advise on future operations and infrastructure. And one of the other goals is to shift part of our operating and endowment funds into sustainable investment strategies. So currently, as an impact investing intern at Active Impact Investments, which is a real firm, I have real world experience that I can apply to guiding that investment change. I'm also a leader on the Climate Crisis Coalition at Western and a Canadian University ambassador for the Canadian Business Youth Council for Sustainable Development. That's a mouthful. But either way, we've been lobbying Western to make these positive changes for over a year. So this is very exciting. And overall, beyond my vast knowledge in the space, my skills of being detail-oriented, critical, and analytical will be key to developing sustainability update, since the last one Western released was in 2014, and to making some realistic.
Thank you very much for your speech.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Haley Lee, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks. Hi Council, my name's Haley and I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently in my third year in the Media and Public Interest program in FIMS, and currently I'm the AVP of Public Affairs. But in my first year, I was the Advocacy Commissioner for the FIMS SE, and in BC, I started the first Mason Bee Sustainability Initiative, and this past summer, I worked as a pro bono consultant for a flood management startup, marketing how the City of Vancouver could better utilize flood data to build and enact sustainable structures to proactively plan and protect against floods. These experiences have helped me gain a wider breadth of knowledge regarding how and what sustainability looks like and is manifested. However, the greatest asset I bring to this committee are not these experiences, but rather my passion. My passion for making sure the earth doesn't dip on us and what us humans can do to help. My intersectional lens as a queer, low-income woman of color and someone with a disability brings to the table a perspective that often gets ignored or is a secondary agenda item in the white hegemonic structure that sustainability has traditionally been facilitated through. In no way can I speak for these communities, but my own lived experiences provide a lens that this committee can use to utilize to ensure we approach and execute proactive change with diversity rather than homogeneity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kendrew Jacob, whenever you're ready. Okay, Julia Martin.
Julia, we can't hear you. I can tell that you've unmuted, but we're not hearing any audio.
Hi everyone, my name is Julia and my pronouns are she and her. Over the past year, I've been afforded opportunities to work with various environmental groups, such as EnviroWestern as an advocacy executive, and more recently, I've become a member of the USC's Environment and Sustainability Working Group. I'm passionate about educating, learning from, and working with others to find solutions to environmental concerns and their intersecting social issues. And if selected for this role, I work diligently to advocate to ensure the interests of undergrad students are heard. I believe that my background in media and the public interest and women's studies offers me a unique and nuanced understanding of power relations, which underpin every intersection of the environment and sustainability. Due to my passion for the environment, in addition to my knowledge of decolonial and native feminist theories, I believe that I can help to create a culture of sustainability throughout the Western campus and its operations, which prioritize students, the community, and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Patel Parth.
Hi everyone, my name is Parth, and over the past 4 years of my undergraduate career, I've been honored to be part of a variety of opportunities which have helped me gain an insight onto multiple facets of the university's operations. Within residence, on campus, throughout the programs, there are many places where we often see, and just in general, that environmental planning is an afterthought, where it's an obstacle that we must overcome. Whereas it should actually be a challenge that we are rising up to, something that should be in the forefront of sustainable environmental development. That's something that I want to do and be a person to advocate on behalf of and help to find creative solutions with the president as part of their committee to help make Western a more environmental friendly campus. We only have one Earth and all of us should do a part to help make it better.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to all the candidates for coming out. I believe we'll now put the Google form where you can vote in the chat if you are a voting member of council. Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong there.
I'm gonna post that right now. For people who are proxying, because that's what I've been responding to in the chat. You will also, so basically you'll fill out the form twice. Once for your vote and once for the person you're proxying for. So don't put it in the spreadsheet to record other votes. Use the Google form to vote for this one.
For the email, Melissa, do we just put our own email twice?
Yes.
Okay.
You'll know what that means. I know who there's
okay.
Only a couple of people proxying. Okay, cool. I will send that over. Or even if you just put like, I don't know, put a little note saying that it's a like proxy in brackets just for Julia and for Punan and
Melissa, is the voting doc on the agenda? Or did you send it in the chat? Sorry, I totally missed this.
Julia just sent it in the chat like right now.
Okay, good. I was stressed that I missed it somehow.
No, you're good. Sorry, Julia, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that's it. I just threw the form in the chat, so hopefully everyone can access it. And like Melissa said, just make sure you're putting your USC email in there.
we will also accept your UWO one if you've already voted, which I see some of you have used your UWO. So.
All right, I think we'll just give everybody one more minute to finish up voting. And then Julia, just whenever you're done, just come back and message me. And as soon as we're finished, whatever we're in the middle of, we can announce the results for the candidates here.
Okay, perfect.
All right, unless anybody has had any technical difficulties, I think we'll keep going. So now we can move on to, actually, I think we have to actually vote on Turning Point to legitimate the results. So if you can go vote on Turning Point for motion 2, just that would be great. And so we'll have 2 minutes to go vote on Turning Point now to pass the motion. Okay, if everybody's voted then, Melissa, do you want to close the polls when you get a minute?
All right, polls closed, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. Okay, next up is motion 3. President Reeser, did you want to speak to the motion?
I can just very briefly, just again for context, but basically it is, we're entering our recruitment season, our hiring season for the board of directors. So we basically we always have a representative from from USC Council, a counselor on this committee to ensure that obviously the voice of you all is represented there. And so that is what we are looking to do today. And happy to take any questions if there's any clarification needed there, but it's we do this every single year and it should lead to a great crop of new candidates for the board of directors.
All right, perfect. And I'm assuming we're just doing nominations from the floor. So if anybody would like to nominate themselves or one of their peers, you're welcome to. Oh, actually, sorry, I'll get a seconder for this motion before we move into nominations.
Councilor Katadia, I can second that.
Great, thank you. Okay, sorry, now we can do nominations.
Councillor Ali, I would like to nominate President Katadia if she's able to.
Do you accept the nomination?
I'll accept the nomination.
Okay, great. Are there any other nominations? Okay, great. If there's no other nominations, then I think we could just use the passing the motion as the confidence vote. So if you just want to go to Turning Point and if you are satisfied with the nominee, then you can just vote in favor of passing the motion since we only have one candidate and she can be acclaimed. So please go to Turning Point and just vote in favor of the motion if that's fine with you. Okay, I think we should be good. Melissa, if you want to close the polls.
Yep, polls are closed. The motion passes unanimously.
All right, great. Congratulations. Okay, and we'll move on to our fourth motion. President Reeser.
Yeah, very briefly, I'm going to defer this mainly to VP Barroso, but I just wanted to start by saying the amount of work that she and her team and everything that went into this was incredible. The results that came of it were obviously I will let her speak to, but it was kind of a first of its kind, and it's been extremely exciting to see. But other than that, I will let Victoria speak to this further, so I will defer.
Awesome. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. Awesome. So I'll talk a bit about it, but we're very excited to kind of talk through this and have it at this stage now. So just a bit of an overview. So a reminder of the timeline that normally the USC would submit their budget submission kind of end of August, beginning of September, and not really do anything about it until January, February, when the Board of Governors and the university is kind of putting together its final submission for the next academic year's budget. Then it would go to Senate. So I decided to kind of switch things up this year. Also, as a result of COVID, we wanted to make sure that what we were doing was relevant to what was able to happen this year. So in the summer council meeting, we kind of mentioned that we were going to change up the process. And then I think it was at the September council meeting, you guys actually passed our budget priorities, which gave my portfolio the authority to conduct research and make recommendations, which is what we're presenting to you today for your endorsement. So just kind of as an overview, the themes that were approved were equity, diversity, and inclusion, affordability, sustainability, and work integrated learning. So what I was able to do was secure a meeting with, or a consultation rather, with the provost, the vice president, operations and finance, and the associate vice president, planning, budgeting, and IT of the university, which is where we discussed these ideas and the feasibility of them. I just want to emphasize the fact that this is pretty unprecedented for the USC. We don't normally meet with this level of administrators to talk about our budget priorities, or frankly, what students would like to see the university put money towards. So this was a pretty big win for the USC, and a really big step in the right direction, hopefully for whoever is fortunate enough to take my role next year and kind of work through the university affairs portfolio. We got some really positive feedback from them, and it was a really productive discussion that was really meant to kind of show them what we were thinking, and garner any feedback as to how to best recommend these things. Because I think the other thing to note is that the USC usually kind of puts budget recommendations forward, but then, we never really know how feasible those things are going to be. And so this time I think we're pretty confident in these asks. And I'm prepared, if this passes at council, to send this either today or tomorrow, and follow up with them, so that they now have a formal submission kind of backed by the research that my team has done, and the formal asks as per the themes that this council endorsed. So, the feedback that we got from them was that we've set a standard for a new process, and they were really, really pleased with what we put forward. It was Matt and I that met with them. So I'm happy to answer any questions or go into more depth about how this process worked, or what we did. But you have the report, so I also don't want to reiterate things if you've already read it. So I guess I'll just stop there. And happy to take any questions or comments.
Can I ask a question, actually? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Councillor Baldwin, just had a quick question. I don't want to get too nitty gritty, but I was reading through it and I just saw something come up under accessibility for the Western Access Guarantee. I don't know if you could go into more detail on why that was canceled and how you see that sort of playing out and putting it back in.
So I, on the affordability asks, I worked pretty closely with the registrar to kind of come up with these asks. And what we identified was the Western Access Guarantee used to exist. It used to be advertised literally as one of the top 10 reasons to come to Western. And what it was basically a financial aid guarantee that anything that's not covered by OSAP, you could then look to your institution to cover. It was taken out around 2008 or 2009 as a result of what's called the Student Access Guarantee. It was an initiative put in place by the provincial government, which essentially stated the same thing, but restricted what universities should or were at least mandated to support students in. So essentially what happens is, you would apply for OSAP. OSAP covers up to so much of your like fees associated with school. And then you're supposed to be able to look through the student access guarantee to your institution to hopefully cover the difference, whether it be through bursaries or scholarships or whatever. But what it did when that was kind of introduced by the provincial government was it restricted it to, or at least what universities or institutions were mandated to support, to costs associated with education. So it was mainly around tuition and textbooks. But what the Western Access Guarantee used to be was more holistically inclusive of costs associated with your education. So could be anything from like cost of living, other associated costs, whatever that might look like. So in conversations with the registrar, and kind of in light of COVID and the affordability we know being a huge issue, we wanted to recommend that the university kind of reinstate that guarantee that they will help support through financial aid costs that are maybe not so directly associated with like education specifically, but more about like your holistic educational cost to attend school. So that's what we're recommending. And I think we asked that the university kind of reinstate that guarantee and that like mentality almost to approaching financial aid, but also that they ingrain that in policy. And also I noticed that the student access guarantee kind of portion of what Western is expected to do through the provincial government is not actually listed in any policy anywhere. So I wanted to make sure that that was also ingrained into what they're doing as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, actually, I think we kind of skipped a step, and I still need a seconder for the motion.
Councillor Folia, Engineering.
Thank you. Did you want to speak to the motion at all?
Victoria did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Okay. President Reeser? Your hand was up in the participants tab. I don't know if that was intentional.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to mute so we didn't have feedback there. Yeah, so I just wanted to say, like, just to reiterate what VP Barroso had said. She said it quickly, but I just wanted to highlight something in the sense that they spoke at the end of the meeting, there was a comment made that we'd set a new standard and set a new bar. So I just wanted to really hammer the fact that this is kind of and especially with the creation of the UA role, there's been a lot of kind of this pioneering and this trailblazing, and I just wanted to commend her and her team on that in the sense that it's something that this will be kind of the model to follow for years to come. And it was something that I think will lead to these asks being considered quite closely by the admin. So I just wanted to highlight that fact. She said it kind of quickly, but just wanted to say that they really did respect the way that was handled. So I just wanted to highlight that one last time before we move forward on the motion.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Are there any other questions about the motion? Okay, are there any points of debate? All right, if there's no points of debate, then we can call to question.
Okay, I'm going to close the poll. Everyone is voting now. Perfect. Closing the polls. And the motion passes unanimously.
All right, congratulations. Oh, and Julia is ready with the PACES results.
Okay, so huge congratulations to Anna. She was the winner of the election.
All right, congratulations, Anna. And thank you to everybody else who came out. Okay, next up, our fifth motion, President Reeser.
Yeah, I'd love to. And I guess just for a quick piece of context, in terms of the new stance of it within the agenda being it forward, we just wanted to ensure there's a discussion at the agenda committee, just to ensure that that all of our councilors are able to engage with our exec report. So that's why it's a little bit more forward than it's normally been. But yeah, we're excited to run through them and we can take those away and I can start off for everyone. Megan, did you want us to share it or I just want to see if.
Yeah, I can share it. Did you guys send me these slides?
Yeah, Cam sent them out.
Oh wait, yeah, sorry, Cam did a while ago. Actually, never mind. It's just down a bit.
Oh, all good.
Cam is just super on it.
Alrighty. Well, with the slide now up, I will lead forward for our team here. So yeah, so I guess to start off, there are obviously numerous things that we can speak to. And within the larger document that we've been updating, kind of that roadmap update sheet, there's a very deep dive in terms of what we've all been doing in regards to the things that we set out at the beginning of the year to accomplish. So obviously I've assumed everyone's read through those, but did obviously want to highlight some of the other pieces that are a little bit either not directly accounted for in those. And that's what all we're kind of using these PowerPoint slides for. So these are the kind of 4 areas I guess I wanted to highlight that have been a large portion of my time for the past month since we last spoke at the end of October. So I guess in regard to sustainability, no secret that that's something I'm really wanting to push. So we have obviously the PACES membership election, we just happened, and big congratulations to Anna. So really looking forward to that piece there where we'll be able to work together and really set some ambitious stuff there. And again, really wanting to work toward, we've been able to action some staff within the USC to really start taking a deep dive in terms of what we can do internally to really improve ourselves, as well as when I ran for this role, I really wanted to both look internally to us as well as externally with the administration. So big piece there within sustainability, within the organizational piece. One thing that has been, I guess I'll highlight within that is that we have created our kind of projects charter is what we're calling it, but basically it means that'll make it a huge streamlined process for us to interact with some of our staff supports as well as our teams to really get stuff done in a quick and timely manner, which is going to be very critical as we're now at roughly the halfway point in our terms. So I will go there. Also, I wanted to highlight campaign school, given the fact that our lovely Melissa Camfuis had an incredible hand on this and worked so hard. And we've seen some of you who are even in our call today at some of those meetings. But I wanted to give a huge shout out to Melissa and everyone else who played a role there. So that was an incredible tool we had to really help people get involved with their elections. External advocacy, obviously not my direct file. There's a lovely VP who obviously that is her lead. So she'll be speaking to a lot more depth in there, but was something that we did last week as well as I'm currently in this week. And then finally within student life, just quick shout out and quick kind of plug, I guess I can say, is the opening of our Mustang Lounge study space. We saw so many students studying on the floor and in random spaces all over the UCC. So we wanted to give them a comfortable space, especially as we headed into our final season. So I'll stop there. Also big shout out to 303 dropping a new song out of nowhere. It's not the best quality, but I'm going to make it happen and let people check it out for themselves. But check that one out, and then I will turn it to Victoria. Or also do it. We can also do. Why don't we stop there? I'll do questions there. I just realized we can stop kind of at each slide at each person, and then we'll go from there. So my bad there. But are there any questions on anything I've spoken to? Okay. Well, obviously, if there's anything else, feel free to reach out on any platform, but I'll turn it to Victoria.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm going to do a little bit more in depth because I feel like some of these files are more public and you might want more of an update on them. So I'll start on the academics piece. So I've still, every week, every day, I'm working on Proctor Track. I now am sitting on what's called the Advisory Selection Committee. So I'm still a member of what's called the Remote Proctoring Student Protection Subcommittee. So that's where we've been working on some communications that are supposed to be coming out shortly. We're just waiting for the university's approval on them, but we've put together some more student-friendly like FAQs on some of the information that's being collected and how Proctor Track kind of works and why the university, took the direction that they did when they selected Proctor Track back in the summer. So hopefully that comes out relatively soon. And then kind of in terms of a next step, I'm sitting on what's called the Advisory Selection Committee, which is where we are actively reviewing vendors. I spend a lot of time on that now with the goal of potential implementation for next semester. So just kind of as just like an update for the community that like it is something that the university is working on and we're looking into other alternatives. We also put in an academic survey. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this, but we're going to be analyzing that feedback to inform our next steps. And then the student representation project, it's kind of a vague name, I realize now, but one of my associates has been working on this project pretty closely. They're working with, I'll call them like the university affairs equivalents at the faculty affiliate and professional councils. And the reason why we've kind of started this project is to better understand the student representation on campus on different academic bodies. So things like Senate, faculty and department council, bodies that mostly consist of faculty members, but sometimes have students involved. We want to gain a better idea of what the academic landscape is and where students have a say on academic policy and just generally when things are changing. I find oftentimes by the time things get to Senate or Board of Governors, it's sometimes too late for students to have an impact. So we are working on kind of the bottom-up approach of trying to figure out where students can influence those policies before they're too late in the process. So we'll be really leaning on your faculty councils, affiliate councils, professional councils to support our work in that. And if your VP hasn't received the information yet, they will very soon. On the student experience side, my AVP student experience has been working really tirelessly to put together a mental health roundtable. So we've established it. We've brought together some campus partners, so some student advocates from different groups on campus to discuss the quality and accessibility of mental health resources this year. We're specifically focusing on how students access resources, which is kind of how the group came together. We've met once already and we're meeting again this Friday, but my associate is really taking the lead on this and she's doing a great job so far. So I'm really excited to see what some of the outcomes from this group will be. On the student code of conduct, we have had concerns raised to us about the code and how it's impacting students. Obviously, there was a recent Gazette article that went out, so just want to reiterate that the USC is extremely concerned about the way that student experience is imposing this type of ban on USC affiliated student roles and clubs specifically. But just to clarify that our council is not notified or given the names of any students that are sanctioned through the code. So right now, those are kinds of some conversations that we're having with admin to figure out what that looks like and where the jurisdiction lies between the USC and the university. But as of right now, the USC's kind of interpretation of it is that the Department of Student Experience is misinterpreting the code and overstepping their authority slightly because the code covers Western run extracurriculars and the USC is technically independent of the university. So, I mean, bottom line, I'm continuing to work on this file, and it's become kind of something that a number of our members of our executive team are working on, but I'm happy to answer any questions because I know this has been something that's impacted a number of students as well. I also just threw grad photos on there. I've had a couple of people email me about them, but I know that they're working on it. So if you have, you're having issues kind of scheduling them, you can reach out to either me or our reservations manager, Sue, and she can help you because the basement of the UCC Life Touch booth is supposed to be opening. So we can help you get those done if you haven't already. I also just wanted to say here, I didn't put it on the slide, but I wanted to give an update on the athletics anti-racism motion from the last council meeting. So I had a meeting with the AVP Student Experience, who oversees the athletics department, and I got a bit of an update on this file, and then I can explain some of the next steps as well. So LaDan, who is a part of the student experience portfolio and the one who did our council training, led some specific office hours and training for athletes specifically, as well as there were a number of training sessions that took place for those varsity teams and the athletes on them. There are various campaigns being run right now by Student Experience on anti-racism, trauma, and allyship for students, and they're establishing what they're calling virtual communities of care to foster discussions about this on campus. And provide students with support, as well as Student Experience is doing a review of how new athletes are oriented, and they're looking at specifically some of the OWL training that's done and how it can be improved. In terms of next steps, obviously the USC's budget asks are going to be a really big portion of this because we're asking for improved training, reporting, and the establishment of an AVP EDI office, as well as we're continuing to work with the anti-racism advisors and equity and human rights on this. And then I also have upcoming meetings with the director of sports and rec and manager of sport who deals directly with coaches and teams. So it's definitely not, the work is not over, but I just wanted to provide that update as per the motion from the last council meeting, and then emphasize the fact that I'm still working on this as well. On the COVID-19 response, usually our exec reports are later, so hopefully the tuition policy paper passes, but I won't talk about it anymore until that motion comes up. About supporting students and residents and resident staff specifically. It's more related to the code of conduct, but we also know as a result of that, that there is kind of an uncomfortable living space for students right now and residents, partially as a result of the code, but also as a result of some of the recent outbreaks. So we're just supporting students through that right now. And then we're also having discussions about next semester and next year. So we're looking towards improvements for next semester, not only because of COVID, but also because of the academic experiences and student mental health and wellness. One of these being kind of the extension of the winter break. So this is something that I worked pretty closely with the Western Student Senators on, and we're pretty happy to have kind of played a part in getting it passed. As well, when we look towards next semester, we're looking at the academic load. Proctor Track is definitely part of that. And then obviously like space and potentially getting more space for students on campus. The Mustang Lounge, which I'm sure Hannah will talk about, will be a big step towards that. But also looking at winter weather and what that means for indoor spaces on campus, because things like the big tents from OEEC are no longer around. But then we're also looking towards next year, especially as some of the administration shifts and we start to plan. The university budget, I won't talk anymore about this because I just did, but we're really excited about it. I also just wanted to mention that on the EDI asks, we worked with our ethnocultural student support coordinator and the anti-racism advisors to come up with these asks and to support them as well. I'm very excited about the sustainability ask as well. If I keep telling people if I do anything this year, it is going to be branding myself as the paper towel girl because it's going to be my platform point that I take to the grave. I'm very excited and very hopeful. So, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take questions. But that's it for me.
Councillor Ali, I have a quick question. So just looping back to some of the earlier discussions around the student code of conduct, particularly in regard to the experiences of resident softs. So when we're, like, I've had a couple of students message me asking essentially if they would be, in regard to the sanctions that were applied to them, are they eligible to run in the upcoming USC election, given that the messaging from Student Experience is saying, no, you're not eligible for any on-campus leadership positions until 2022. And the USC is saying that's an overstep and inappropriate sanction. So where does it stand currently in regard to that?
Yeah, I would say for those students, if you can forward my email to them, and I'm happy to help them navigate that process. As of right now, the university has administered the sanctions that say students cannot be involved in USC leadership roles or clubs until 2022. And to my point earlier, we're kind of trying to figure out where that jurisdiction lies. So there is no kind of clear definition as to whether or not it would affect students' eligibility to run in the upcoming election. I would say if you asked the USC, we would probably say no, but if you asked the university, they would probably say yes. So that's where we're trying to figure that out. So I'm happy to support the student and answer any questions that I can. So you can just have them email me, as well as if they haven't submitted an appeal or they're looking for more support, I would also encourage them to contact the Ombuds office because they can also be of support to students in navigating that process. Oh, sorry, I can't see the thing. Amber, you have your hand up?
Yes, I was hoping if you would be able to elaborate on both, or particularly on the mental health roundtable, when it was established, how it was established.
Yeah, so it was established this year within the last month or so. And the way that my associate and I kind of pulled together the membership of the committee was we were looking specifically at how students would access resources. So we looked first to student kind of mental health advocating groups on campus. So Active Minds is a group of, or a member of the roundtable, as well as we looked to, as I mentioned, different ways that students would access resources. So we have members from residents, members from the different affiliate councils, as well as the professional councils. The reason why we didn't include specific members from all the different faculty councils was because we didn't want the group to be so large that we wouldn't be able to kind of move forward with things, but also because as a function of some of the other positions that are available, we did have the opportunity to have undergraduate representation, just like generally from main campus. So we wanted to make sure that we were making a concerted effort to include the groups that would access resources in a different way, rather than kind of just having the group as big as possible. So we're happy to kind of consult with more groups, as well as the peer programs are also kind of on an invitation basis, so they can come to any of the meetings, but they're not expected to be there. I'm trying to remember some of the other peer support. Yeah, so our AVP Peer Support is also a member of the roundtable because they facilitate obviously the Peer Support Center, but also crisis counseling. And then the Health Promotions Coordinator is also part of it as well. So those are undergraduate students that come from different faculties, as well as the members from residents come from different faculties. So that's kind of where the rationale for that came from.
Katie had her hand up.
Yeah, I
Councilor
have
Campbell,
a
sorry.
question about the SOF whole situation. I'm personally a resident SOF, so I can speak from personal experience. Honestly, it's not great in residence right now. I've had experiences where there's like a frosh having a panic attack and there's already someone in the room. Keep in mind the capacity is 2. So if my frosh is having a panic attack, the first thought in my brain should not be, am I going to get kicked out of this building and not be able to be on the USC anymore because I need to help my frosh who's having a panic attack? That should not be in any way, shape, or form a thought that goes through my brain. So I'm just wondering if the USC execs have any plan on asking for feedback from the SOFs, because I know a lot of SOFs, like, we need someone to talk to about this. And as the USC, we need you guys to, not that you're not advocating on about this, but we need this advocacy right now.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And from the few students that I have heard of, I've been able to kind of share those stories with senior admin at the university, and they're very helpful in the USC's ability to advocate for students. Obviously, you know, the 6 of us don't live in residence, so we don't have that personal experience. So I would encourage you and anybody else that lives in residence, soft, first year, to send either myself or just generally a member of our executive an email, sharing your experience, sharing your concerns, and that helps our ability to advocate for you, because I think when it's informed by those personal experiences, it really does allow us to pinpoint where some of the problems are, and from your perspective, living in residence, where some of the solutions potentially could be. So I'm happy to either chat about it offline, or if you want to send me an email, I'm happy to elevate that as well. But I totally agree with you, and I think that's where the USC is coming from, where we want students to have a safe living environment where they're able to succeed. And I don't know if that's the case right now. So that's definitely where our focus is for sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Bajaj, you're up next.
Thanks, Megan. I just wanted to echo a lot of Katie's points that she mentioned earlier. I'm also a ResSof, though currently not in my room. But I think that Katie makes a great point. Like, you have ResSofs that are stepping back from their role, or essentially feeling that they need to turn a blind eye to situations that normally we would step in and be more than willing to help with, because we don't have the supportive housing. And I just like to keep in mind, we know we don't have the supportive housing. Softs overwhelmingly feel like housing is essentially out to get us, or up on our back all the time. And because of that, I think we're really looking towards the USC to look for some specific advocacy on behalf of us, because I know, although housing technically technically ResSofts fall under housing's jurisdiction, you're putting I think it's not housing or student experience's place to step in the USC's jurisdiction, because essentially removing students' ability to be on campus and be involved in extracurriculars could be a very drastic thing, whether that be for their post-grad staffs or just overall their mental health on campus. So again, echoing a lot of Katie's points, I think we're really looking for the USC to advocate on behalf of us.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where my focus lies. And I want to make sure that we're elevating those experiences. And we recognize that resident softs make a huge sacrifice to live in residence and support students. And we want to support them in doing that and make sure that they have a safe living environment where they're able to not only succeed themselves, but be able to foster that supportive environment for their first years. As well, I'm conscious of the fact that, I was a resident staff member in my undergrad as well. So I know that this is also not an easy time to be a staff member as well. The rules are kind of unclear. They're put in a particular position as well, where, they didn't really sign up to be the COVID police, but we want to make sure that they're also in a position where they're able to succeed and able to have a good living environment as well, because I know they're put in a difficult situation. So I hate to just reiterate this, but I'm happy to chat with both of you, or anyone else. I guess I'll open it up offline about this. But if you want to send me an email and kind of share your perspective, I'm happy to elevate that, and hopefully we can move forward on this, because it's something that the USC has been advocating on for a while. But I think it's important to have the voices of students represented in that as well.
Sorry, Councillor Bennett, you're up next.
Thanks, Councillor Bennett, FIM's president. I was just kind of wondering if I could ask your opinion. I actually have a member of my own council who's been affected by this situation, and we've kind of just been playing it in the gray zone for the past little bit while things have kind of been panning out. But I was wondering if you could provide any insight on how quickly kind of advocacy efforts would pick up, whether I should be looking to move forward with removing this person from my council, or whether I should just keep kind of going along.
Yeah, I would say, Katie, if you're comfortable, if you want to send me an email, maybe it's better if we chat offline about this, and I'm happy to kind of provide some perspective and maybe help try and navigate those next steps.
Councillor Lee.
So I work in residence, but kind of more on the other side of it, from an administrative perspective. And one of the frustrations that has come up for myself, and as well as I'm sure for all of the ResOps and Dons, is that there's been no communication from ResOps or housing about updates to COVID policy, best practices, or anything that's going on. And I work in one of the buildings that has an active outbreak currently. So is it possible for you to take on maybe advocating to ResOps and housing in general that some of that messaging is a little bit more consistent and ongoing? Because as of right now, I still have not received any updates about what safety precautions I should be taking, and I've worked 4 shifts since the outbreak in Saugeen was announced. So that's obviously of concern to myself personally, but also kind of to the broader resident staff, no matter what that role looks like.
Yeah. Eva, I really appreciate you sharing that. I think to kind of make it known to the group, the USC's been asking for improved communication for a decent amount of time. I'll say that. I think what helps and what is important about bringing this to council and you using your voice as a counselor is that it shows that there is student concern around this, and it's not just the USC executive specifically that's concerned. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective, and all I can say is like, absolutely, I will continue to push for that, and I will continue to reiterate that. And I'm hoping, as well as you are, to see some improved communication and some specific communication around how the health and safety guidelines change with respect to the outbreaks, because I know, and it was highlighted in the article as well, that the guidelines are changing pretty drastically, pretty frequently. So it's hard to know as a student, either living or working in residence, what the rules are at any given time. So totally agree with you that that needs to be improved, and we'll continue to advocate for that.
Councillor Bennett, your hand is still up. Did you have another question?
No, I'm good. Whoops.
All good. Did anybody else have a question? All right, perfect. Then we can move on to EP Metcalf.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm excited to talk to you all today. As some of you might know, I'm in the middle of my back-to-back lobby weeks. So there's a lot going on this week for me, but I'm excited to tell you all about it. So first, on the side of the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, we just completed our first GA of the year, which was very exciting. I know a lot of counselors on this call were delegates. We passed 3 policy papers, one on transit and community development, one on environmental sustainability, and then another paper on COVID-19 student support. And then there was I'm forgetting the 4th paper.
What, the COVID-19?
COVID, housing.
Sustainability, access.
Oh, and access to post-secondary education, sorry. We added a new intern paper and it throws me off because there's usually 3. So I always forget one. Anyway, so those are the policy papers that USA now has standing policy on, which is very, very exciting. And we also had our provincial lobby week last week, which was also a really eventful week for me. USA as a whole met with over 50 members of provincial parliament. So myself as the Vice President External Affairs, as well as the President, Matt Reeser, attended all these meetings along with different USA schools to advocate on a bunch of different topics. We did it on racial equity, student financial aid, as well as quality of education. So we were very excited to highlight those topics specifically to members of provincial parliament. I'm also preparing for USA semester 2 policy paper consultations. So we're renewing our policy papers on student mental health and Indigenous students, and we're creating a new policy paper on racialized and religious students. So I'm excited about that, and stay tuned because we're gonna have some surveys coming out in the next couple of weeks, just after I do some consultations on the questions in the surveys. Next, we have my U-Crew update. So we are actually in the middle of the U-Crew lobby week right now, as some of you might have seen on my social media posts. Actually, earlier today, I met with the Minister of Crown Indigenous Affairs, which is really, really exciting. We got to talk about some expansions to Indigenous students' student financial aid. So it's very, very busy. I cannot stress how much work goes into planning these lobby weeks and communicating with over 100+ different member of parliament's offices, as well as coordinating the schedules of 10 different student unions and 20 different delegates from each of these student unions. So it's a logistical nightmare, but when it all comes together, it is very, very exciting that we get this collaborative policy lobbying on behalf of students. And we also finished our debt-free degree campaign. So thank you so much for everybody who submitted your stories about student financial aid. Those stories have been sent off. We got the media reception at McGill and McMaster University, as well as they helped reinforce some of our student financial aid asks. So the asks that we are doing at the federal level for U-Crew include supports for Indigenous students, international students, student financial aid, and undergraduate research. All of the points were on my platform when I ran for Vice President of External Affairs. So I'm excited to be doing what I can to implement those campaign promises. And then next we have the policy papers that are coming up. So like I said, oh, see, there's the list of the policy papers right in front of me. Anyways, so we have the tuition policy paper that's coming later to council. I'm very excited to say that that paper was passed unanimously by both of the committees that it went through after 2 rounds of consultation, but we can talk about that after. And we're also working on a student financial aid policy paper. We know that affordability has been a really, really big concern this year, and that was part of the reason why the tuition policy paper was asked to be passed by council. But in the spirit of having comprehensive policy papers, we decided not to tackle student financial aid in the tuition policy paper, just because they're both very, very large topics that are often separate, but they do interact. So we're starting the student financial aid policy paper, which we'll be consulting on sometime in December. So watch out for Eva, who will be leading those consultations through her external advocacy committee. And we hope to get that to you sometime in second semester. As well as for municipal advocacy, we have a municipal lobby week planned for December 7th through 10th. We have, I believe, 10 different meetings with different city staffers, the Mayor of London, as well as different city councilors. So we're very excited to bring the municipal budget brief that was passed unanimously at council, I believe, last month or 2 months ago. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to include my favorite TikTok, but I can't think of it right now. I'll put 2. I'll put 2 next month. But I can open up the floor to any questions if you guys had it. Oh, and my most interesting lobby week stories, we had an MPP prank us on our call. He like literally came in and was like, psych, and was like, I'm just kidding, my mic is actually working. And we were all like, but it was very funny and it definitely spiced up the day. And then he also, if you follow me on Twitter, you saw, he was like, I'm not taking a picture with you unless it's fun. So he made us all do moose ears. Yeah, so anyways, they're keeping it interesting. Members of provincial parliament are definitely a lot of fun. So if you have any questions about anything that I said, I'd be more than happy to answer them right now or later, whatever. Oh, okay, I'll say it now. It's No Nuance November. That's my favorite TikTok trend. Cool, thanks. So if there's no questions, I can pass it off to Hannah.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So to start, there's been a lot of things going on in my portfolio. If you follow us on Instagram, I'm sure you've seen lots of different cool campaigns recently. For the peer programs, I think something that's really, really important that they are doing and have started doing this month is different discussion groups for different communities within our student body. For example, Pride Western and Accessibility are both offering a number of discussion groups. Some are more support-based, some are more focus groups. So if either of those sound like things that are of interest or your constituents are asking, I definitely recommend that they try it out or check it out. We have been running a number of campaigns. The ones that I chose to highlight were the Gender Equality Network has been running a really cool campaign called Swiped On. I'd recommend you check it out. It demonstrates kind of like different stereotypes, but like male sexuality and things, and it's really interesting. Pride Western was also working with Cam's portfolio on a Trans Day of Remembrance campaign, and then Ethnocultural Support Services is running a couple different interesting campaigns at the moment. One is their podcast, which is called Bipocalypse, and I think you should check it out because it's really cool. Also, they are running a new campaign on cross-cultural couples. It's really interesting. I would recommend you check it out. Peer Support has extended a walk-in service for its remote peer support. That wasn't when I mixed up those words. Remote Peer Support is offering a walk-in service right now, so students can go online and just sign up and walk in kind of at a moment's notice. We are also extending peer support from December 10th to 22nd. Those hours will be reduced, but students will be able to access the service throughout exams. As well, virtual CMHA crisis counseling has been extended until December 17th, which is another resource we're really, really excited about. So my slide currently isn't the most up to date because we were supposed to be running a pop-up last Friday for the purposes of mental health and getting different resources to students. We are also going to be handing out free burgers and hot dogs. We have had to circle back with bylaw, but I'm hoping to have some exciting updates for you all soon. As well, this semester and this past month, Theater Western as well as USC Charity and Public Arts have all been providing a number of virtual programs. The one I'll focus on is Nuit Violette. I don't know if you all clicked the link that I shared in the Facebook group, but the public arts team, as well as members of CAM's communications portfolio, put together this really, really fantastic website showcasing a lot of different student art. I know Eva submitted a piece, which was wonderful. But yeah, really would recommend checking it out if you still have a chance. It's pretty amazing how many talented students we have on this campus. Lastly, for orientation, right now all leadership positions are paused for hiring until next semester. This includes orientation staff, as well as head softs, etc. And I will stop there if anyone has any questions.
Hannah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So with regards to the hiring for orientation leadership, is there a more established timeline that we can expect? Like, is that something that'll take place starting in February, or do you have any details about that?
I don't have any details at the moment. There are a number of high-level conversations that are happening between the USC executive and Western admin at the moment. We do expect, obviously, that it will happen on a timeline of second semester, but no concrete details yet as to when that process will start.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Campbell?
Hi, I just had a question once again about the orientation thing. Just because everything has been pushed back, are you concerned at all, or is orientation at all concerned about the decreased amount of applications you'll get specifically for residence softs due to the increased demand for housing this year?
Yeah, that's a great question, Katie. I'm not concerned in terms of our ability to execute a hiring timeline that will ensure that softs will be hired for the 2021 orientation week. As for residents, we've been consulting with residents pretty actively in terms of that pushing the timelines work for everyone involved in these conversations, and everyone is on the same page of pushing these timelines. So I can't really speak to the residents soft recruitment or anything like that, because I think it's fairly separate from the USC's jurisdiction, but everyone involved has agreed to extend hiring into second semester.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have any questions?
Perfect. I'll pass it to, I think Mark's next.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll present these in like 4 different sections. So some of this you've seen, some of it's like more just like active going on. So the clubs first and foremost, we're kind of full into clubs right now. An update on the actual membership, we're at about 11,000 members in the club system, which is awesome, especially for an online year. Was very impressed by club recruitment on that piece. So the one thing we're trying to do right now is trying to figure out what the best way to support clubs is. I think in any conversation I've had about clubs recently, it's about what we can do to better support their operations because of the way that COVID's evolving. A lot of this stuff is still online, and that's kind of the direction we're going with Clubs Week and everything going forward. So some of the next steps, I was actually talking to my AVP today about it. So we're talking about doing a second round of Clubs Week kind of consideration going into second semester, because a number of students are coming back or being involved on campus a bit more. So that's something that we're looking to do for second semester as well as membership closes into January. And then the other piece of this is we've also lowered the club's minimum allowed. So we've allowed 15 members is the minimum now instead of 25. It was a decision made by CGB, so the club's governance board. So that's kind of the rationale. Was a COVID year. It's only a one-time thing just because of the recruitment is a bit different this year. So we've made that allotment just for clubs. And I know a number of clubs are operating differently as well. So we're going to continue to run training sessions through the club's operation coordinator, who's looking at some additional stuff on that end. So I'll touch on budget quickly. I'm just starting the phases. All the documents have been sent out to their respective units, including the executive as well. So we're just waiting for those to come back to get a bit of better grasp on what the rest of the year is going to look like and then what we can plan for next year. Obviously, COVID is going to be a consideration throughout this timeline. So I'm looking to work with the university on their end because they'll be looking into January, February on the budget considerations on that piece as well. So there's a bit of timeline for before Christmas, and then obviously you'll see it as council into January and beginning of February. The last piece of this was elections. So I've been working with the elections team, Melissa's team, the CRO, DRO, on kind of like the bylaw 2 stuff, and then also some recruitment pieces of like how to interpret the bylaw, more online engagement kind of stuff, election rules, and then just like understanding before this all starts and how candidates can engage with the bylaws. And then I'll take my step back, obviously, when campaigning starts. So that's the last piece of this is transit. So I've done a couple consultations with some of the counselors. If you want to talk more about transit, please let me know. We're just kickstarting conversations with LTC on that end. I've heard most of the similar opinions about what's going to happen next year. I don't want to predict too far ahead for how COVID's going to interact with that, but I think that we have similar goals for what's happened this year. The last piece of this is eligibility for second semester. So comms will be going out, I believe, next week or within the week itself to better understand how you can be eligible for the prorated pass, because you are eligible for a prorated pass if you're in London or have in-person classes for second semester. So that's kind of the communications will be coming out soon for that. I'm sure there'll be a question on that piece. I've talked to a number of counselors about that end as well, and there's more just strategic discussions about what actual LTC looks like next year. So I'll take any questions about any of that. Awesome. There's no question.
I think I do. I've got a question about that. When it comes to the prorated pass, whether or not you're eligible for it, are students going to have the option of opting in or opting out of that?
So the way it's going to run is it's not an opt-out program. It's still the universal program, but we're making a consideration for students that are coming back to campus or coming to London that they're able to be eligible for a 2/3 pass. So it's 2/3 of the original fee. I believe it's around 179, if I'm not mistaken. The comms will be out this weekend about it, but that's like you're able to be eligible for the pass, and they're going to do the same system of London location on Student Center or an in-person class. So that's
Okay.
the reality.
The reason why I'm asking, I think I'm kind of thinking into next year. Hopefully it doesn't last until next year, but if it does,
yeah,
just the differences between how we offered it to our students and the way that the Fanshawe Student Union offered it to their students.
Yeah.
The FSU made it, you could decide whether or not you wanted it.
Yeah, and that's a consideration. So the struggle is we go into it as a joint communication, and then because of the semester leaves of Fanshawe, I know the crossover with nursing is a consideration, and Tony, we can talk about it a bit more. But that's because of their semester leave program, we're constrained on how we administer the pass and the fee that we administer. So that's like the kind of the difference between the two. But I do agree that there should be a bit of a different structuring for next year as well.
Okay.
Yeah. We can, Tony, if you want to reach out to me on that, I think the nursing piece is important. So let me know.
Okay.
Did anybody else have any questions? All right. Sorry.
I just said I'll throw the cam. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. I will just keep it short and sweet. So again, we're still working on building our digital presence, especially in the era of COVID. That's been super important to stay connected with students and kind of keep them engaged when we're not able to be with them physically. So again, we've grown digital communications pretty significantly since May 2020 levels by 30%. We've ran a number of digital campaigns this month. If you guys follow us on social media, which I hope that you do, you guys will have seen collaboration with Downtown London, supporting local businesses, doing some content around digital learning, USC clubs, USC elections. We're also continuing to manage the COVID-19 file and the health and safety of students. So we're aligning and working alongside the City of London, the Middlesex London Health Unit, and Western University to roll out health and safety messaging. We've also worked on a number of campaigns throughout the past couple of months. Debt-free degree was one of the biggest ones that our team worked on. You might have seen, if you were in the UCC, a physical campaign. We also did a ton of digital content. We did a ton of media pitches. We had a letter writing initiative, and we sent letters to high-profile politicians across the country, including Justin Trudeau, Carla Qualtrough, who is the Minister of Social Dev, including people like the Minister of Youth, Bardish Chagger, as well as Erin O'Toole and Jagmeet Singh, who are leaders of the opposition. So we're hoping that that will kind of uplift some of Mackenzie's work during Federal Advocacy Week. We're also working on a number of campaigns surrounding elections. So you guys will see a little bit more in the next couple of weeks. But equity in elections is a big one for us. It's not only about, getting folks from a number of different backgrounds to run, but also to ensure that they have the resources to get themselves elected. So we're working with some alumni from the USC as well as some current student leaders to build some physical and digital content. We're continuing to manage media relations and to speak a little bit more to some of the elections content. We are launching a nomination form. So if you do have any peers, friends, loved ones that you do feel like are going to be great candidates in the upcoming election, please keep an eye out on our social media. Feel free to submit them and kind of encourage them to run. We are also developing an elections toolkit so that all students have the resources that they need, including how to debate, how to build a campaign, how to build a platform, how to understand the USD as a whole, and kind of giving them the resources that they need. We are also doing some content around getting out the vote and kind of compelling students to get involved in the election. For folks who are on faculty councils, this is really important information to pass along. I would love to see you guys share and kind of get folks in your constituents to really run in these elections. We're also working on developing an advocacy communication strategy. We've had a lot of discussions in our advocacy steering committee surrounding the way that we communicate our advocacy and kind of keeping students updated with all of the work that we're doing. I think that the organization is very complex and it's quite difficult to, communicate everything that we're doing to all students at all times. So we're just trying to build a strategy that allows us to effectively communicate the ton of advocacy files that we're working on. Lastly, it's a project that I'm really excited about is we're building a digital atrium. So essentially, as you guys are aware, there are lots of different USC services that are offered inside of the UCC. Things like the Peer Support Center, things like food support services, things like the Spoke, the Way, the Purple Store. So we're basically working on digitizing those services and putting them up onto a website. Additionally, on that digital atrium, there's going to be an opportunity for clubs and faculty councils and the peer programs, peer support and programming committees to booth. So if you guys are interested in, getting a booth for a week, running an event, running a campaign, running some content on our digital atrium, please feel free to reach out to me. I will send information out to all of the folks on faculty councils, especially the presidents, the VP communications, to ensure that you guys are kind of looped into that process. I will stop there and take any questions that people might have.
Did anybody have any questions? All right. If there's no questions, sorry, I could just hear the echo.
I think Cam needs to mute herself.
There we go. Okay, thank you for your presentation, everybody. And I think we're actually still looking for a seconder on this motion, I believe. So could I get a seconder for the motion?
Councillor Kotadia.
All right, thank you. We already did our question period. Are there any points of debate on the motion? Okay, if there's no points of debate, then we can go to turning point. And once we're done voting, we will take a break. But we'll just do our voting first.
All right, I'm going to close the polls in 3, 2, 1. Polls are closed and the motion passes unanimously.
All right, awesome. Okay, so we can come back at just after 8:50 then. So we can take our break and I'll see you then. All right, if we want to start making our way back, we can get started again. All right. I'll get screen sharing again. Okay, President Reeser, do you want to talk about the motion?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I misread that. Yeah. No, I guess I'm going to probably defer this again to the two leads who've been taking that, who put a lot of work into this. But yeah, I think it's going to be. It was something that was actioned, and I think it's something that has been executed extremely well. But I think Victoria is going to kind of lead off in the preface, and then if there's any questions, obviously they'll probably field most of them. So go for it, Vic.
Thanks. Awesome. I'll just talk about this quickly. So if you remember, our executive was tasked with creating this paper at our summer council and to report back in November when we had the final product. So here we are. We worked closely with Councillor Zoe on this. I don't think she's here today, but she was a great support to Mackenzie and I and our teams as we worked through the paper. She was very helpful in consultations as well. Mackenzie and I's associates also contributed to the paper, helping us write the body text to support the principal's concerns and recommendations. As Mackenzie mentioned in her executive update, we did 2 rounds of consultations on this paper on both the principal's concerns and recommendations and the final product with both the Student Experience Standing Committee and the External Advocacy Standing Committee. We're happy to report that it unanimously passed, or the paper itself unanimously passed at both of those committee meetings before coming to this meeting today. So we're really excited to have it come to council. It's probably good that we now have a stance on it for our advocacy, and we're appreciative of all the feedback that we gained through consultation. Don't know if Mackenzie has anything to add, but besides that, I think that's it.
No, nothing else to add. Thanks, Victoria.
All right, could I get a seconder for the motion?
Councillor Ali.
Thank you. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think both of them have done incredible work. I'm super excited. Getting to see it, through the different stages has been definitely really exciting, and I'm very excited to get to consult on the ancillary fees paper in the future. But yeah, they've done a wonderful job of explaining it, and I'm super excited to see this go into action.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions on the motion? Yeah, President Fakarani.
Hi, Zemmer Fakarani, Social Science President. I have a quick question. So in the former tuition policy paper that we had before this one, or maybe it was the affordability policy paper, there were recommendations that students that the USC stands by the recommendation that students should be able to pay monthly, quarterly, in addition to per term and yearly. In this new policy paper, what it says instead is that Western universities should offer accommodation to students who require deferral or multiple installment programs. I'm a little bit concerned about this shift in the recommendation, just because I think it leaves determining who requires accommodation in the hands of the administration, as opposed to having this universal design approach. And so I was just wondering if we could speak to, or someone could speak to, why this recommendation was changed.
Yep, I can speak to that. So I don't think there's a need to necessarily be super concerned about it. The reason why we formed it as, or framed it as Western supporting accommodations is because that's how students get those quarterly, monthly, or otherwise payment installments. It's not a normal thing that the university just has those options available. They're always available by nature of accommodations. So I don't think we really changed what was supported in the last paper. It was just a matter of wording, and that we still support those accommodations being made accessible to students, because they are made accessible on the basis of financial aid and capability. So the university has access to that information and is able to accommodate students accordingly, which supports essentially the same thing from the original paper.
Thanks, Victoria. I guess I'm kind of just wondering why we're not advocating for more flexible payment schedules for all students, and why we're only advocating for that for a particular group of students, because I think a whole bunch of folks here would agree that Western's approach to financial aid is extremely stringent, and that's especially the case for international students who aren't afforded the same standards that domestic students are afforded. So I'm just wondering why we're not advocating for a universal design approach, and why we're instead advocating for accommodations.
I don't think it's necessarily about us not advocating for a more accessible approach for students, but I think what we're advocating for is to ensure that the students who aren't able to meet those larger installment payments are the ones receiving that accommodation first. There are a lot of students as part of the Western population that are fortunate enough to be able to afford those large installments. And the university has information based on students' financial capabilities to be able to give those accommodations to students who need it based on their financial situation. I work pretty closely with the registrar, and they're more than happy to provide accommodations for students who need it, based on financial needs or any other personal needs. If something were to come up and a student needed an accommodated payment opportunity, the registrar's office would be very happy to accommodate that. So, I don't think it's about, I'm getting feedback. I don't think it's about not advocating for a universal design, but it's about making sure that those who are not able to pay with the large installment schedule are getting that support firsthand, and we're prioritizing that. I also just want to maybe push back a little bit. Obviously we're advocating for increased affordability, and that includes financial aid and kind of where the Western Access Guarantee comes back into play. But the university also did put $13.5 million into financial aid this year, specifically for COVID-19 response. And they have a number of scholarships available specifically for international students as well. I worked pretty closely with the registrar this year in order to increase the opportunities for financial aid specifically for international students as well. And it's something that we're hoping that this paper will help us do as well. So definitely something that's on our radar and something we're hoping to continue to advocate on. But we want to make sure that we're reaching the students who definitely need it first.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I'm actually still looking for a seconder on the motion.
Is Councillor Ali not the seconder on the motion?
Yeah, Councillor Ali is the seconder, Megan. I think they just need to vote in Turning Point.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Okay, I guess we already did questions. Are there any points of debate on the motion? Okay, if there's no points of debate, we can call the question in Turning Point. All right, I think that was 2 minutes, Melissa.
Sorry. Mute wasn't
All good.
muting. Yeah, so the motion passes unanimously.
All right, great. Okay. Oh, I think I was behind the slide there. My bad. Okay. Do we have a mover for this one? Doesn't look like we have a mover for this one, so I'll look for a mover then.
Counselor Folia, Engineering.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder?
Counselor Ali.
Thank you. Counselor Folia, did you want to speak to the motion?
I can defer to either Mark or Ian, I believe, if either of them wants to speak. Maybe that's from him.
Yeah, no worries. I can talk to it quickly. So the next 4, I believe, were all up for review this cycle within the policy calendar. So there was like not many changes made. If you look at the policies, I think there was small wording, but GNF has seen them all. So if there's concerns about any of it, obviously we can talk about it now, but it's all just for review in the cycle. So that was the reason for it coming forward.
Counselor Lee, did you want to speak to the motion?
I can also defer my time back to Mark or to Keenan if they either had something they wanted to add or elaborate on.
I'm all good.
Okay. All right. Did anybody have any questions on the motion? Any points of debate? Counselor Baldwin, are you trying to unmute? Okay, good. Okay, we can call to question then if there's no points of debate.
Okay, we've got almost everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and close the polls in 3, 2, 1. Polls are closed and the motion passes unanimously.
All right, awesome. Next up, motion 8. We're looking for a mover and seconder for this one as well.
I can also move this one again. Brennan, Engineering.
Thank you, Counselor Folia. And a seconder?
Counselor Mendes.
Thanks, Councillor Mendez. Councillor Foley, did you want to speak to the motion?
No. If VP St. Pierre wants to speak to this again, yeah.
I will say the same thing I said last time. We changed one word to agents just because the bylaws say agents, but that is it.
All right, thank you for the context. Sorry, we had Councillor Mendez as a seconder. Did you want to speak to the motion? If you want to later, you can, that's fine too. But then we can move on to questions now. All right, if there's no questions on the motion, then we can go on to debate. Are there any points of debate? Okay, if there's no debate, then we can call the question on turning point. All right, I think that was close to the 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I will close the polls in 3, 2, 1. And the motion passes unanimously.
All right, perfect. Next up, motion 9. If I could get a mover and seconder, that would be great.
Councillor Ali, Arts and Humanities.
Thank you. And can I get a seconder for the motion?
Councillor Prue, Music.
Thank you, Councillor Prue. Councillor Lee, did you want to speak to the motion?
Again, I will shuttle my time over to VP Spear.
Nothing has changed on this one either, but it's just the directive for how there should be council grants, and it goes to executive council for further recommendations. So.
All right, thank you. Councillor Prue, did you want to speak to the motion?
No, I defer to Mark if he has anything else.
Okay, perfect. Are there any questions about the motion? Okay. Seeing no questions, we can move on to debate. Are there any points of debate on the motion? Okay, if nobody has any points of debate they'd like to contribute, we can call the question. So please vote on turning point for motion 9. All right. Sorry, what was that, Melissa?
I was just about to say that I was just waiting on one more person, and then the vote count actually went down. So that we are waiting on 2 more people. Maybe everyone just take a quick minute to double check your vote there.
I didn't know you could unvote.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the polls. And the motion passes unanimously.
All right, perfect. Okay, motion 10. Could I get a mover and seconder for this motion?
Counselor Ali, Arts and Humanities.
Thank you. Sorry, we still need a seconder.
President Kitching.
Thank you, President Kitching. Councillor Lee, did you want to speak to the motion?
Back to Mark.
Nothing's changing in this. The only context I'll give on overarchingly the student awards rules and procedures is me and Vicar having conversations around what this looks like in the future. But I think the policy itself or procedure itself is good for now. So that's why it's coming to council.
Okay, great. Thank you. President Kitching, did you want to speak to the motion?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, perfect. We can move on to questions. All right, if nobody has any questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mendez.
Yeah, I have a question. It says for the fall term that nominations close October 31st, which is 2 months into the school year. But then for the winter term, it's January 31st, which is like less than a month. So would that not disenfranchise teachers who are in the second term, like in terms of their ability to get awards?
So I'm just reading the line, one sec. Yeah, so the specific question is to the evaluations in the winter term shall be concluded no later than first Monday of March.
It says the deadline is January 31st.
Okay.
The nomination period 2.012.
That's it. Awesome. Yeah. And Vic, I don't know if you want to comment on this at all from your end.
Hello. Yeah, I can just speak to the teaching awards piece specifically and where we predict it might go in the future. Personally, when I came into this role, my goal was to reevaluate kind of how the USC does awards and recognition. And in that, I think, and what Mark and I are looking towards in the future is potentially getting rid of the USC's teaching awards in favor of putting more awards towards students. A couple reasons for this. Right now we get money from Western Alumni or like Western Alumni Association to administer these awards. And they've chosen to not kind of support that moving forward. So I think this is a good time to kind of let this policy phase out. And then also we're looking towards adding more awards, not only to just recognize more of the initiatives and work that student groups and students individually are doing across our campus, but also to potentially be able to provide more financial supports through awards to students, specifically as kind of a response for COVID as well. So the details are not kind of fleshed out yet, which is why we're going to continue to renew this policy for the sake of having it, but I think with the intention of potentially it being phased out as we move forward.
I also, sorry, just to comment on the actual question, Councilor Mendez, I do think it says opens no later, not close by. So I think that's just the clarification on that end. If that answered the question, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, did anybody else have any questions? All right, if there's no other questions, we can move on to debate. Are there any points of debate on the motion? Okay, if there's no points of debate, we can call to question on turning point. So please go and vote. All right, I think that was 2 minutes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thanks, Melissa. Okay, next up, motion 11. Could I get a mover and seconder for this motion?
Councillor Baldwin.
Thanks, Councillor Baldwin. And a seconder?
Councillor Ali.
Thanks, Councillor Lee. Councillor Baldwin, did you want to speak to the motion?
No, not really. I can just, obviously pass it off again to Mark St. Pierre if need be.
Awesome. Yeah, the only thing I'll add is this, we were tasked with this from the summer council meeting. We think the realignment's been fairly effective from conversation with the VPs. I think the one piece of this that we're looking to do, the only changes we really made was just the name to University Affairs from student experience. So that's the change we made on the naming piece of it, just because we think it's good to have a bit more of a consultation piece for the VPs. I know we talked about this at ACOC, but we're looking to do a bit more consultation with counselors and discussion at those standing committees. So that's something that we're going to work with this policy along. The only other change is we've changed creating policy to recommending policy, just because standing committees don't create policy. So that's the only change. I'll throw it to my AVP Keenan to make that change for us. So that was a good pickup on his end, but that's the only thing I'll add. So.
All right, thank you. Councillor Lee, did you want to speak to the motion?
Shocking, I know, but if VP St. Pierre has anything more he'd like to add, he can have my time.
Okay, thanks. All right, if you have anything, you can just hop in, but otherwise we can move on to questions on the motion. Seeing no questions, then we can move on to debate. If there's no points of debate, then we can call to question. Please go and vote on turning point. All right, that should be 2 minutes.
Closing the polls, and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have motion 12. So we will do nominations from the floor after we get a mover and seconder.
Councillor Mendez.
Thanks, Councillor Mendez. And a seconder.
Councillor Folk.
Sorry, Councillor Folia, were you seconding that?
Yeah, someone else was too, if they want to.
Okay, well, we'll just take you. I heard you. It doesn't really matter. Councillor Mendez, did you want to speak to the motion?
No, I can yield my challenge.
Okay. Councillor Folia, did you want to speak to the motion?
No.
Okay. Are there any questions on the motion?
Councillor Ali, Arts and Humanities. So I just have a brief question. Is for whoever is nominated and ultimately selected, are they therefore ineligible to receive the bursaries in question? Or would they still be able to apply for the bursaries even though they are on the panel?
Is there anybody who thinks they could answer that? Councillor Mendez or Councillor Folia, you're welcome to.
I can answer.
I'd like to give my speaking to VP St. Pierre.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, I'm just trying to organize where my head was at with that one. So yes, they would still be able to apply because they're only picking people on the committee, but they'll dissolve their selection committee after the committee's created for the committee. It's hiring a committee for a committee, so they'll dissolve the committee so they can apply. That makes sense. Yeah.
All right, thank you. President Reeser?
Yeah, thanks, Megan. I just, it was a clarification on the original agenda. I was as the mover. I don't need to at all. But I guess just that was on the original piece there. For context as well, on this motion, it's following up from our previous discussions in the past. It's sequentially kind of increased in it's progressed throughout the past couple of months. And all this is kind of finalizing that one of the last pieces of the people who will kind of decide who's sitting as one of the 6 students here. So I just wanted to refresh everyone's memory as well, just in case anyone's forgetting exactly what this is for. But I just want to play that as well.
My apologies. I was looking at the bottom of the agenda. But if anybody has any other questions, feel free to ask those now. And President Reeser, if you want to jump in on the questions, you're welcome to. Okay. If nobody has any questions, then we can open up the floor for nominations.
Councillor Ali, I would like to nominate Councillor Omaradian.
Councillor Omaradian, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Palladino, did you still want to nominate somebody? Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay. If there are no other nominations, then we could just go to Turning Point, and if just do it as a vote of confidence or to acclaim Councillor Omaradian for this position. So please go vote on Turning Point.
Okay, I'm gonna close the polls in 3, 2, 1. And the motion carries 97% in favor, 3% abstaining.
Great, congratulations. Okay, motion 13. Could I get a mover in favor of the motion? Or
President Reese.
We have research
Yeah,
on the
sorry,
agenda.
President
Listed as
Figure
well,
on the
if that
agenda,
helps,
sorry.
but I don't, it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it's all good. I was looking down in the appendix section, so that's why I didn't, it just wasn't listed there, so my apologies. But sorry, we had Councillor Baldwin as a seconder, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, perfect. Are there any questions about the motion? All right, then we can move on to debate.
Councillor Palladino, I have an amendment.
Okay.
I understand the policy and I'm aware of the policy. However, I'm not in favor of this motion. In fact, I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion. I don't think it's fair for faculty presidents or affiliate presidents to worry about their entire faculty and their affiliate university colleges and on the USC. And it's also unfair to their constituents. And it's also unfair to have the number of counselors solely based on the number of constituents when the counselors of affiliate colleges and faculties do just as much as the larger faculties and larger affiliates with limited representation. So I would like to amend it so that if there is a faculty or affiliate that has under 1,000 constituents, and they have a minimum of 2 counselors, which would be the president plus another counselor.
Could I get a seconder for that?
Councillor Mendez.
All right, thanks, Councillor Mendez. Did you have anything else to add on the amendment?
No, I think Councillor Palladino did a good job speaking to it.
All right, thank you. Did anybody have any questions about the proposed amendment?
Only my question is just, Nicole, can you send me some text, like something in writing, just in a message, or share something with me just so that I can put it up on the screen for everyone?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thanks, Melissa.
Privately message you?
Yep, that works.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Baldwin.
Yes.
Mr. Nick for a minute.
That's okay. I just had a quick question. I don't know if maybe Mark could answer this. Like the way I currently read the policy was that there's a policy that defines how we update council, and then this is just like sort of solidifying that process. I don't know, is that what we're doing here? Are we going around that policy? Would we have to update that policy before we do something like this? I'm just curious on that.
So if council chooses to vote on a composition for next year, they can do that, but the policy will still stand for future years. And that's how I would interpret this in this situation. So it's council jurisdiction on how they interpret the policy, but it's an existing policy, so it'll be a future year policy.
Okay, sorry, just to clarify. So if we want to change it to be continuous standing, so this wouldn't have to be done, we would change the standing policy.
This would be just a change for next year.
Okay, and then it would have to be, but there is an existing policy that informs this kind of thing every year. And if we change that, then this kind of just like it could happen like automatically in future years. Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Palladino?
So we can amend this motion for the coming year. And then also I can pass another motion for council to vote if we want to make this a permanent decision, something that changes within the actual policy itself instead of just the motion for next year.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll just stick to the one at hand then, right? Because we would need to change the actual policy to do that in the future. I think just to clarify for everyone, I think that was what everybody was saying there. Did anybody else have any questions about the amendment?
Councillor Beltran does.
Yeah.
My question here is going to refer to how the Faculty of Health Sciences is broken up, because it's technically one faculty, but it's 3 as well, with 3 individual presidents plus the Faculty of Health Sciences president. So with this amendment, are we going from having 3 counselors and 1 president all having voting rights to having 4 presidents and 3 counselors? Because I would definitely be in favor of having all our presidents having voting rights.
Councillor Paldino or Councillor Mendez, did you want to answer the question?
The way I looked at it is I looked at what VP St. Pierre put. And so I would looked at the faculties or affiliates that it would have 1 seat for next year, which is Arts and Humanities, Music, FIMS, Dentistry, Law, Education, Huron, and Western English Center. Because that's how it was split up on like on the chart.
To answer Councillor Beltran's question, we look at representation based off the faculty of health science per se. So that's why you'll see 4 seats there, but they choose to divide out by the association, but it's not set up to divide out by the association currently when the representation we look at under the policy. But if that's something, an amendment to the policy in the future, if that's a conversation you want to have, it looks like we're going that direction anyways, but I would just say that's a faculty of health science conversation.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking that if we're having this conversation, nursing is so distinct from the other ones, and health sci same thing, but nursing is very distinct. It should be considered for this just as much as music, just as much as arts.
If there's no other questions on the proposed amendment, that we could move on to debating the proposed amendment, if that works. Councillor Lee?
I, for what I consider to be fairly obvious reasons, will be supporting this amendment. I think it is really clear and important to define that lower enrollment is not indicative of low engagement or an inherent deficiency within a faculty, the departments or the programs there within. As I mentioned earlier, you know, this is years such as these really express and define the need for strong present leadership and representation, particularly for smaller faculties whose funding has been impacted by extenuating circumstances such as COVID. And it is important that our students, in a time where they already have so much uncertainty, fear and frustration with the administration itself, are feeling strongly supported by their USC as a whole. And beyond, the practical elements of, having 2 voices and 2 votes is so much more impactful than one, symbolically it is horrific to, run campaigns around empowering and amplifying the voices of smaller faculties and then remove their votes. So I think, while I understand and respect, the nuance and unyielding nature of policy in a lot of contexts, I'm very strongly of the opinion that it would be a critical error to take away seats in a context, in a year, in a situation where students are already not feeling heard, and particularly not necessarily feeling heard by their USC and higher administration. And for those reasons, I am very, very much in support of this amendment. It is important that the smaller faculties are not completely washed out by the larger faculties on our council. And that is what I fear would be happening if this amendment were not to be passed. Arts and FAM and all of the smaller faculties have played a critical role in shaping Western's culture and environment, the policies that we see here, and play a critical role in council as a whole. And it is going to be extraordinarily damaging to the students within those faculties to lose an additional voice on this council. And so again, for those reasons, I urge all of you to think critically about the role and importance of smaller faculties in this decision and vote in favor of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Kitching is next up.
Thank you. So Councillor Kitching speaking in support of this motion. While this doesn't actually impact Kings at all, I still strongly urge Council to support this amendment. I think as a matter of fairness, I think it's really important that we are kind of elevating the voices of the smaller faculty so they don't get drowned out by the larger ones. And also just, I think also as fairness to the counselors who are elected to represent those faculties, because that would be a lot of weight to be put on those individuals' shoulders to have to represent the unique needs of an entire faculty. The larger faculty, if you drop the ball on something, that's okay because you've got other counselors who can pick up the slack if there's a mistake or anything like that. But if you don't catch something, if you're the only voice for your faculty and you don't catch something, you don't advocate for something in time, like that's a lot of pressure on one person. So I think it's really important that we get 2 voices at least, like the minimum of 2 voices per faculty, just so that there isn't that level of pressure on any one individual on our council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prue is up next.
Councillor Prue, Music, speaking in favor of this motion. I first wanted to thank those who have spoken up and said something, just because as a smaller faculty, this is not a change that we would be able to make on our own, particularly for the reason that this motion is being put forward. As a smaller faculty, we aren't able to necessarily make changes without support of larger faculties, which is an inherent issue. So I appreciate the support of those larger faculties that have spoken up. I'd also like to say, as a faculty president, an experience that I've had is that I'm not able to put myself forward for additional things on the USC because I'm spread so thin across the USC and across my own faculty council. So for any additional working groups or committees, I can't put myself forward because I can barely stay on top of the things which means that music doesn't have as much of a voice across all of those groups. So again, speaking for this motion, I strongly urge other councillors to do the same.
Thank you. Councillor Cortadia.
At the risk of redundancy, I'm going to echo a lot of what was already said and speak in favor of this motion. As an affiliate president, I certainly recognize that presidents have a lot of additional responsibilities for running their council as well as sitting on the USC. And as Amber detailed, that makes it really difficult if there's only one counselor that happens to be the president for that counselor to engage as effectively as they can. So definitely want to urge everyone to vote in favor of this. I think it makes a lot of sense for the smaller constituencies to have more voice and more presence. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Hey, Councillor Bennett, FIMS president. I also, unsurprisingly, just wanted to take a second to speak in favor of this motion. Kind of, again, reiterating Amber's point, I can definitely attest to the sentiment of juggling the USC and especially on our end, juggling the kind of intricacies of keeping a smaller council organized. Lots of opportunities that I'm sure a lot of us have been really interested in, but passed up because we just don't have the capacity to take anything else on. This extra position would mean an incredible amount to FIMS and I'm sure to other councils who only have 1 seat on the USC. So yeah, I'll reiterate that I'd really encourage everyone to think critically about this and the impact that it'll have for our smaller faculties and those members of council who have been kind of spread thin this year.
Thank you. Councillor Pakarani.
I'll be super duper quick, but what I just wanted to say, and also I'm in favor of this motion. I just wanted to say that I think it's important for us folks at the larger faculties to also, stand in solidarity with our friends from the professional schools, the affiliates, and the smaller programs. I think, social science and science in particular do have a lot of leverage at the USC, and that is on the basis of us having more student enrollment, but like Councillor Ali mentioned, that is not a testament to other students' engagement in student life. And I've been concerned, and I remain concerned about the fact that should we diminish the ability of the smaller programs to have their voices heard, we will create inequities in the USC's programming, in their advocacy, in our student experience as a whole. So I definitely encourage everyone from the larger faculties to also vote in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Folia.
Hi, so I just have a quick question about just the wording. So it says the two counselors that would be elected, which would be the president and another counselor. I was just wondering if that's still like binding for the president to be that additional counselor in case they do have like a very heavy workload and like wanted to step back from it and give their counselor position to someone else in their faculty.
Counselor Palladino or Counselor Mendez, would you like to answer the question?
I can field this one. So the way that it currently is structured, Mark, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not binding. Like presidents are able to give up their vote for someone else who ran. Am I right, Mark?
Yeah, you're right. So the policy reads that you can like drop off the voting member. Megan, sorry, this is a separate point. Do you mind if I jump in just to mitigate some things?
Yeah.
So I think for process-wise here, just to make sure we're not overstepping our own procedures, we should be amending the policy at this meeting to make the amendment to again for next year. So if that's, I think that's just because if we're going to make this motion, we're going to violate our own procedures, which is just not great in essence for the USC. So I would suggest that be the motion moving forward, but I'm not going to overstep just from a policy standpoint.
Okay. Counselor Palladino and Counselor Mendez.
So I point of information. I just wanted to know if that means that, so if council is to vote against motion 13, with or without the amendment, then we can bring up a second motion to amend the policy.
Well, I think you could just vote against your own amendment and then propose a new amendment.
So,
and what would the amendment be that we're amending the policy?
Can I offer some? Oh, hold on, I'm just gonna actually turn the video on. So a couple of options procedurally. Megan is correct. You could vote down the amendment and then propose a new motion. The other possibility that I think could work, it's a little inelegant, but we could put your amendment in as the first be it resolved. And so it would, instead of, we would add in, you'd have to add in something about be it resolved that the council composition policy be amended to state, and then your wording. And then the last be it resolved clause could be it further resolved that council approve the council composition outlined in Appendix H. And then I would do some real fun, quick clerical stuff to make Appendix H look the way that it needs to look. Or you can do it as two separate motions, which would essentially, though, be bringing new business, Megan, I think, because if we're amending the policy that's not originally on the agenda, I think it would have to be new business. It is time sensitive, though, because I have to have this so that I can get ballots going.
Yeah, we need it for election in January.
Yeah, so those are kind of the options that I see from a process perspective. I think it's up to council where you want to go with it.
So can President Palladino and I just motion to do the second option, to do them all at once? So sorry, Melissa, I'm bad at procedure. What does that so what would it do specifically? Do we have to strike this amendment and then propose a new amendment?
Megan, how many amendments to amendments do you want to do?
Well, I think we can only do one amendment to an amendment, right?
Yeah, so you could propose an amendment to this amendment.
Okay, then I'll propose, oh, sorry.
Yeah, and then once that goes through, then we vote on the original amendment, and then if that, whatever happens with that, we go back to the main motion.
Okay.
Then we would still have to go back to it in new business, though, because that doesn't address like the policy itself, right, Melissa?
So I think the option that Councilor Mendez is referring to they would amend their amendment to specifically refer to the policy.
Okay.
In this motion.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were saying we couldn't do that because the motion is.
If they wanted to introduce a brand new motion to address the policy, that's when it would become new business. As an amendment, we can do it all in one. It's just not the prettiest looking thing, but it's doable.
Okay, Councilor Mendez, Councilor Palladino, whichever Yeah, Councillor Palladino.
So if we were to, so we want to do the second option, that would be amending the policy. So what I'm hearing is we don't have to do like a new business. We don't have to do another motion amending the policy because this amendment to the amendment would amend the standing policy. Is that right?
That is what I am suggesting as an option. Yes.
Okay, and that would be a permanent amendment to the policy that wouldn't just carry over this year, but all the years until it was changed again.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what you are correct. It would last until someone else decided to change it.
Okay, then yes, we will go with that. We'll make an amendment to the amendment.
Okay, so be it resolved that you update Appendix X to, or sorry, Appendix H to reflect the changes that you wanted, right, Melissa? That Councillor Palladino and Councillor Mendez wanted?
So I think what you would need to do is it would need to directly reference the council composition procedure. So it would be something along the lines of be it resolved that the council composition procedure be updated to state that Dana's adding it in for us. And then the rest of the text. Like everything else that you've got. So it's really just adding that piece at the front end. So if you're looking at the agenda, Dana's just added it in.
So are you looking for one of us to move it?
Yeah, one of you would need to, someone would need to move the amendment to the amendment, assuming that that is the language that you want to use.
I'm comfortable with the language, so Councillor Mendez.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mendez. Sorry, can we get a seconder for the amendment to the amendment?
Councillor Palladino.
Science. Thank you. Are there any questions about the proposed amendment to the amendment? Are there any points of debate on the proposed amendment to the amendment? Okay, if there is no points of debate, then I think the best way to do it would be to vote. If you click on the participants tab and use the yes or no arrows there, or if you want to abstain from voting, you can click go faster. So those in favor of approving the amendment to the amendment, please click the green check mark. Okay, I think. Okay, thank you. If you would like to vote against the amendment to the amendment, please do that now. All right, and if you would like to abstain from voting, please do that now. All right, and so the amendment to the amendment passes. So then we need to vote against the previous amendment, I believe. just for procedure.
No, you don't need to vote it down because you just voted for the amendment to the amendment. If we vote down the amendment, then we're also voting down the amendment to the amendment.
Okay, so we're good. Then we just need to vote on the motion as amended in Turning Point. So please go vote in Turning Point on the motion as amended.
Unless there's more debate on the motion.
Oh yeah, well, yes, my apologies. If anybody had some debate on the motion as amended, you're welcome to. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Barkhouse.
Yeah, hi, Councillor Barkhouse, Science. Just as a member of a larger faculty, I just wanted to briefly say that I support this amendment. The support I've had from my fellow science counselors this year has been super helpful to me, and I think more than one voice on the USC is something that all constituencies should have. So I just wanted to say I'm in favor of this. Thanks.
Thank you. Were there any other points of debate before we vote? Yeah, President Reeser.
Yeah, I just, as one final point, I just wanted to obviously, so speaking in favor, but I did just want to provide a brief piece of clarity in terms of the original kind of intent of how this all started. I want to be very clear that I commend the creativity and how the council has come together on this, but I just wanted to make it very clear that the intent of this was coming from us just reading the policy as it read, as it stood. There was no intention of trying to, from any of the comments in terms of reducing voices or anything along those lines. So I just wanted to make that clear from the intent. Well, I do obviously commend where the motion has come to now, and it sounds like council is in agreement. So I just wanted to say that briefly before we move forward with this motion.
Thank you. Did anybody else have any points of debate they wanted to contribute before voting?
Megan, I'll just add the updated numbers are now in the appendix if people want to see what the changes before they vote.
Okay, great. Thanks. We'll maybe just give everybody 1 minute then to preview those changes in the agenda if you need. And if you've had a chance to look over the changes, feel free to go and vote in Turning Point. Councillor Barkhouse, is your hand supposed to still be up?
No, I apologize, Megan. I'll take that down.
I wasn't ignoring you. I just wasn't sure.
No, no worries. All good. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the vote in 3, 2, 1. So the motion as amended carries 86% in favor, 11% opposed, and 3% abstaining.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so If anybody feels particularly passionate about this issue, our last break was a little bit after 8:30 and it's approaching 10 o'clock. Would you prefer to do the board of directors report first or have a break if anybody's particularly? Okay, we can maybe just do our break now before we get into the reports then, even if it's a bit early. So we'll come back at just after 2 after 10 then. All right, if everybody wants to start making their way back, we can start with our Board of Directors report. All right, if we don't have a report tonight, we could start with governance and finance then.
Absolutely, thank you, Megan. So governance and finance, couple things actually to report this time. Obviously, we went through the motions. Obviously, the biggest thing was composition, council composition, which we just voted on. I think there was a bit of miscommunication on that. We would have discussed it a little bit differently. But obviously, to that point, governance is very important. So I'd encourage you all to come out and sort of, if you can, to sit in on our meetings. It's maybe not the most exciting topic, but I would definitely encourage you to come out. So we did through all those motions. We looked through executive financials. As well, we looked at the bylaw 1 potential updates. So those should be coming in the January council meeting, but we discussed them. As well, the fun thing we discussed was voting records. I think it was decided that we would be publicly releasing voting records from council meetings onto the agenda. So that was something that we discussed as well. Happy to take any questions if you need to, or thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Councillor Baldwin. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask those now. All right, if there's no questions, then we can move on to our advocacy report.
Alrighty, so if you didn't surmise it from the meeting, most of our time in the last couple months and last meeting was looking at the tuition policy paper. So providing feedback to VPs Metcalf and Barroso. And just as a heads up to council as a whole, we will be having another meeting in December, on December 17th, specifically to provide some feedback on the upcoming ancillary fees paper. So all of the Zoom information about that will be posted in the USC Facebook group closer to the date, but just keep that date rumbling in the back of your minds, so you can come and give Mackenzie some wonderful feedback, and make sure that that policy paper is looking as strong as possible as we move into the new year. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have, but other than that, correction, it's the student financial aid paper. Forgive me. So it's that paper, still same idea. Come consult, give some ideas and feedback. But other than that, that is essentially all that has been new for our committee.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, if there's no questions, we can move on to student experience whenever you're ready.
Hi, so at our last meeting, we were able to go over the tuition policy papers with Vice President Barroso. And then we also had Councillor Ali come in and give us the first ASGB update, which was awesome. And she also posted it in the Facebook group as well. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out just to get an update about what the working group is doing. And yeah.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? All right, if there's no questions about the reports, we don't have any for discussion items tonight. Is there any new business items?
I have one, Councillor Ali. So let me just get the exact date, but Fan Market, aka Films, Arts and Music, is putting on a market of live music and arts vendors coming on Nicole, if you have the exact date, that might be handier than me trying to scroll through. But it's really an exciting time. It's going to be super fun. Come out and support local artists. It's going to be a great time. Nicole, do you have the exact date for that?
I think it starts November 30th.
That date. Come out. It's going to be fun.
Okay, thank you. Feel free to like post that in the Facebook group too if there's an event page or something. Okay, are there any other new business items? Okay, if there's no new business, then I'll be looking for a mover to terminate.
Councillor Ali.
Thank you. And a seconder.
Councillor Mendes.
Okay. Are there any objections to terminating? Okay. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Good luck with your exams and everything. And we'll see you in January.